I once believed that life was something external, like the wind brushing past my skin, cold, indifferent, and uncontrollable. It felt as though I was a leaf being blown around by forces larger than I could ever comprehend. Day after day, I wrestled with questions, fears, and insecurities. Why wasn't I enough? Why did everything feel like a constant struggle? It was a dance with chaos, but I didn't realize I was the one leading. I saw the world as a storm, never realizing I was the creator of the winds. I came into this world, just as you did, carrying the weight of a past I could barely remember, yet it shaped everything I did. They told me we come from stars, that we're born from something divine, and that we are here for a reason. But how could I be divine when I felt so small, so disconnected from everything? I didn't know then that I was more than this body, more than the roles I was playing. I didn't know that part of me existed beyond the physical, guiding me with an invisible hand, urging me to wake up. The waking up didn't happen all at once. It came in whispers, little nudges of intuition, quiet moments when the world felt still, like a ripple in a pond that grew larger with each realization. And with each ripple, I started to remember. I began to see that I wasn't just a body or a mind navigating through time and space. I was a fragment of something much larger, a consciousness, an eternal part of the universe itself. But that realization came after years of fighting against everything. Every challenge that life threw at me felt like a battle to be won. I believed that my problems defined me, that every obstacle was a reflection of my shortcomings. If I didn't have enough money, I felt inadequate. If my relationships were rocky, I felt unworthy of love. I was entangled in the story of lack, the story of not being enough. And because I believed those things, they continued to manifest around me. You see, what I didn't know then was that every problem I fixated on was creating an equally powerful solution. I had been so focused on the darkness that I couldn't see the light emerging just on the other side. Every time I obsessed over what I didn't have, I was also launching rockets of desire for what I truly wanted. But I didn't understand that the more I focused on the problem, the more I distanced myself from the solution. One evening, sitting alone in my room, I found myself consumed by a familiar fear. Bills were piling up, and the uncertainty of how I would survive loomed over me like a shadow. My mind raced with thoughts of failure. I was spiraling down a familiar hole, deeper into the belief that nothing would ever change. But something strange happened in that moment. I stopped, not because I had the answer, but because I was exhausted from the constant struggle. I closed my eyes and breathed. In the stillness, I felt a presence, not outside of me, but within. It was subtle, like a whisper from a forgotten memory. It told me that I had been looking in the wrong direction all along. It wasn't that the solution didn't exist, it was that I wasn't allowing myself to see it. I was so focused on the problem that I had forgotten the other side of the equation, the expansion. Every time I felt lack, the universe had already created the abundance I sought, waiting for me to align with it. The realization was both humbling and empowering. I began to understand that I wasn't separate from the source energy that had brought me here. I wasn't disconnected from the solutions I craved. In fact, those solutions were already mine. I just had to shift my focus. My emotional state was my compass, guiding me back to alignment. Every time I felt fear, doubt, or despair, it was a signal that I had veered off course. I was tuning into the problem, while my inner being, the larger, non-physical part of me, was already basking in the solution. It was then that I realized the importance of emotions. They weren't enemies, as I had once thought. They were guides, showing me the gap between where I was and where I could be. The gap between the vibration of the problem and the vibration of the solution. And once I understood that, I began to practice something new. I stopped fighting against the things I didn't want and started focusing on the feeling of what I desired. I began with small steps. Each morning, I'd take a few minutes to imagine the solutions already manifesting. I'd feel the relief of having enough money, the joy of harmonious relationships, the peace of mind that came with clarity. At first, it felt like pretending, but soon it started to feel real. The more I aligned with those feelings, the more the outer circumstances began to shift. I remember one day, sitting at my desk, a bill in front of me. Normally, that piece of paper would have triggered anxiety. But instead of diving into the old pattern of fear, I paused. I let myself feel abundant, even though nothing in my bank account reflected it. I tuned into the vibration of having rather than the vibration of needing, and something miraculous happened. Within days, unexpected opportunities for income started to appear, things I could never have anticipated. It wasn't magic, at least not in the sense I had once thought. It was the natural unfolding of aligning with the vibration of my desires. I had finally learned to step out of the way, to stop resisting, and to allow the solutions that had always been there to flow into my experience. In the months that followed, I continued to practice this shift in focus. I realized that every problem was an invitation for growth, not a punishment. Each challenge brought with it the opportunity to expand, to become more of who I truly was. The key was not to avoid the contrast, but to embrace it, knowing that within every difficulty lay the seed of its opposite. As I deepened my connection with the non-physical part of me, I began to feel a sense of peace that I had never known before. It wasn't that life suddenly became perfect, but rather that I no longer needed perfection to feel at ease. I trusted the process. I trusted that whatever contrast I encountered, it was guiding me towards something greater. I began to see myself not as a victim of circumstances, but as a deliberate creator of my reality. I think back to those days when I felt lost and overwhelmed, and I smile. Not because the challenges weren't real, but because they were the very thing that led me to this understanding. I had been searching for answers outside of myself, never realizing that everything I needed was already within. I am an extension of source energy, just as you are. And that means we are never separate from the solutions, the abundance, and the well-being we seek. The world around me didn't change overnight. But as I changed, as I aligned more and more with the truth of who I am, the world began to reflect that back to me. It's a dance, this life, a constant interplay between contrast and expansion, problem and solution. And I now understand that every step of that dance is a gift. The biggest lesson I've learned is that we are never truly separate from the things we desire. We are the creators, and the universe is always responding to the vibration we offer. When we tune into the feeling of what we want, rather than the absence of it, we open the door for it to flow into our experience. So here I am, still growing, still expanding, but now with a sense of joy and trust. I no longer feel like a leaf tossed about by the winds of life. I am the wind. I am the creator of my own reality. And as I move forward, I do so with the knowing that all is well, that everything I desire is already on its way to me, and that I am always guided by the larger, non-physical part of me, my eternal self. This realization has transformed my life in ways I never thought possible. And now, every day is an opportunity to align with that truth, to remember who I really am, and to live from that place of infinite potential. It is a journey, one that I will continue for the rest of my days. But now I walk it with joy, knowing that I am both the creator and the creation.